Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are and whenever you are. Welcome to another episode of the Community Live Stream. My name is Chuck Tomasi from ServiceNow. I am the ServiceNow guy with the sporting the dark green bow tie today, and here to bring you more information from the community, a random collection of whatever I can find, not only to provide you answers, but to explain how I got to those answers. The one quick check to make sure that the streams are up and running. And we have a live audience out there. Yes, we do. Thank you very much for joining us. I do this every weekday, at least every weekday that I can, on YouTube and Twitch. So if you happen to be over there, go ahead and subscribe to that channel. Give it a like. If you're in the chat room, give me a shout out. Let me know where you're from, what's happening. Give you a good morning right back at you. Love to hear from you. As I said, this is the show that brings you the answers and the explanations to people's questions in the community. I go through as many as I can every day on the ServiceNow community over at community.servicenow.com. So if you've got a question, go ahead and post it over there. If it's related to ServiceNow reporting or ITOM or ITSM or the platform in general, that's where I tend to focus, is around the platform, the custom applications, the integrations that go with that, and bring you insights to that. Make sure that if you do post something in the community, it goes into the proper forum. For example, don't just throw something into the developer community if it's more related towards ServiceNow discovery. Off to a good start here today. Discovery, for example. That wouldn't make much sense. You're not targeting the right audience. It'd be like walking into a candy store and asking for a fishing pole. It's not going to work. Maybe somebody in the candy store knows something about fishing, and you'll be lucky to get that, but you're better off going to the sporting goods store to ask questions about fishing poles, guns, and ammunition, that kind of thing. So similar kind of thing with the forum here. Just make sure you get that in the right place. There is a topics field, so make sure that you put it in the topics, and please only post once per question, and one question only per post. Makes it easier for people to find the answers, makes it easier for people to respond. It just makes life easier in general. Quick audio check, make sure everything's working there. Video check, everything looks good. If you are watching on YouTube, say hello. If you happen to be over at Twitch, we also simulcast this on Twitch over at twitch.tv/NOWCommunity. You're more than welcome to view there, as some of you have done in the past, and some of you are doing at present. Thank you very much. If you happen to be watching this later, hey, go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel, and you'll get notifications when more information comes up on the YouTube channel. And go ahead and like this. If something in here is helpful to you, I encourage you, click that like button. Greatly appreciate it. Helps other people find the useful content. Again, don't post questions in the chat room because nobody's going to be able to find them later. It's just going to be a stream of consciousness as this thing goes along. I will be using my personal developer instance that I got for absolutely free, not because I'm a ServiceNow employee, but because they're available to everybody. If you go over to developer.servicenow.com, you can get yourself a free personal developer instance and also find out what developer meetups are coming up, what the scripting APIs are, get some free learning material, lots of good information over at developer.servicenow.com, which I have here. I was referencing yesterday, happens to be on the same page I left it on yesterday, looking for information on Glide Aggregate, which is one of the classes that we have available in the scripting APIs. But there is much other information in here. For example, the menu for managing your personal developer instance, waking it up in the morning, giving a Z-boot, turning on plugins that you may not normally have access to on your organization's instance. So you could use this as a proof of concept. Lots and lots of good information over there. I encourage you to go to developer.servicenow.com and look around and give it a look. I'll also be looking at some of the documentation at docs.servicenow.com if we run into questions or I want to reference links back to that. So good morning to all of you who are joining. I appreciate morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are and whenever you are. My mind is still somewhat in European time zones after taking a vacation last week. It's good to be back, still slightly jet lagged, waking up at 3 a.m. thinking, oh, well, I slept until noon in Rome. So let's get us started. I do have one announcement, and that is that the next episode of Tech Now, episode 53, is coming up. I'm going to highlight that on the screen for you right there so you can get that information. It is a very long link. I'm not going to put that in there, so I made a bit.ly link that you can see, bit.ly/TN53reg. We'll bring you to the registration page. We are going to be covering Guided Tour Designer next, what is the 6th? Tuesday? Wednesday, something like that, whenever June 6th is. I'll figure it out when it comes up on my calendar. Dave Slusher will be covering most of the content in that. Craig Stepp is going to be doing a quick tip on tags, record tagging. He uses it a lot. I don't tend to use it quite as much, so it'll be interesting to see what he's got to say about that. And then we are planning out the June, July, August. And oh my goodness, June is tomorrow, which means I will be coming up with topics for Q4. This is getting more and more fun as we go on. So I look forward to seeing you there. Lots of good information on Tech Now. Episode 53 coming up next week. Just jot that link down, go to the registration page, and you'll get reminders and calendar invites and whatnot that you can make use of, and hope to see you there. But you are not there yet. You are here, and here is in the community. I am going to do a quick page refresh on that. If you want to join in the fun, community.servicenow.com. Good morning, John G. Morning, Carolyn. Good to see you again. I've got my cup of herbal tea ready to go. I think it's cranberry, raspberry, something or other. Very good. Made it very light. Didn't make it very strong today. I'm going to start with unreplied questions. Let's go for need to add manual approvers on Service Portal. Wow, that's a good question. How would you do that? Because you don't have a related list with the new action. Hadn't thought of that. When we add manual approval on a form, it needs to be reflected on Service Portal 2 on My Approval widget. How can we achieve this? Is it not automatically there? Okay. When you add is the approver in the related list. Let's spell approver correctly. Fingers are off to a good start this morning on the standard form. Standard form. What state is the approval in? You may not see it if it is still in requested. Not yet requested? What's this? I can't remember the state. If it is still in not yet requested state, it's only going to show up when it's in requested mode. Check the state, check the related list and state of that approval for that user and let me know. All right. I suspect it's just a data issue more so than a UI issue, but who knows? We'll find out. Okay, that's one. One down, one to go. Oh, well, let's do the desk bell. Have some fun. Good morning to you. If you are joining, change the color highlight of the text when updated on Service Portal. More Service Portal questions. Wow, we have a lot of them. Okay, I need to highlight the fields, change the color, which are updated so it's changed in a form when sent to approval on Service Portal. Any pointer or reference how we can achieve this? It's not going to happen out of the box because the form widget is the form widget. You're going to need to, best I can suggest is you're going to need to make your own form widget, which you can control. You can control the HTML and CSS behavior. You can find the out-of-box form widget, you can clone it, and start modifying. Note this requires AngularJS, knowledge in HTML, AngularJS, JavaScript, and CSS. More customization. A lot of people like to customize. New workflows in personal dev instance not working. Let's find out what they're trying to do. Is it actually a personal developer instance issue, or is it something else? Hi, I posted this question in instance help, but I wanted to post it here as well. What did I say at the top of the show? One question, one copy, one question per issue. But let's see what's happening. I'm using Kingston personal developer instance. My company is planning on getting ServiceNow, and I'm using it for some practice to refamiliarize myself with it. I recently created a new workflow, and it will not work with newly created catalog item. The workflow defaults to the out-of-the-box workflow, service catalog request, and uses the request table. I've checked it over multiple times and everything looks okay. It should be working. The details of my catalog item are as follows. Asset name, Dell Latitude 5580. Item, Dell Latitude 5580. Category, hardware. Workflow name, service catalog / laptop request. Workflow table. When I order the 5580 laptop through the ESS catalog, it generates a ticket, but it will revert to the out-of-box workflow above. When I view the ticket and click View Workflow, it shows the out-of-the-box service catalog request workflow. I'm wondering if this is a personal dev instance characteristic or missing something else. I'm assuming the personal dev instance should work fine like a full-fledged customer dev instance, but I may be wrong. And there are some things that the personal dev instance won't do. Has anyone experienced this issue? No. I have not experienced that issue. I have created custom workflows for catalog items on personal developer instances before. I recommend checking the workflow properties of each of the workflows out of box and your custom workflow to see if there are any conditions that may be interfering. If I remember right, there were no conditions on, let's see, maintain item. Come on, maintain item. There were no conditions on request items. It knows that that's a special table, that workflows don't allow conditions. So you can't say state is this, or, so let's go to this. And I don't have a, oh, that's a record producer. Silly me. What is that doing there? I'm under maintain items, not record producers. Let's pick a standard out of the box one, like OSS Mavericks. And the workflow is procurement process flow software. We go here, you can open that record, and I should have a related link. No, I don't. Okay. Workflow versions, that's what I was looking for. Workflow version, publish, true. I thought there was a way to edit workflow through here. This seems to be getting a bit complex. Maybe this will bring up the workflow editor. Yep, workflow under IDE.do. Come on. Here's our canvas. And what I'm looking for is the conditions on this workflow, which are going to be under here. I'll need to check the properties. And if I remember right, conditions disappears. Yeah, see how the condition tab just disappeared? That means you can't put conditions on here. Each workflow, excuse me, each catalog item points to a specific workflow. Otherwise, you could have that catalog item definition pointing to this one, say procurement process flow software, and a condition would say, oh, well, this doesn't apply. Then what do you do? So we're really preventing people from harming themselves and not letting workflows run. So let me retract that statement about conditions. I recommend checking the workflow properties on each of the workflows, testing the workflow, the custom workflow, by clicking the arrow button. at the top of the workflow editor to ensure it starts. There was something else. What was it? Shoot. Was this it? I missed it. Procurement flow software. There was something else that I wanted to check, and that was under, I think it was under properties as well, to make sure the table is correct. What was it? It's published. Although if you're testing it yourself, that won't matter. Check that your workflow is published. I know what it is. And looking one more thing at the workflow, it is published. There was something that said run if all, oh, that was under conditions. I'm thinking of something else. So what I'm looking at is workflow. Let me pull up something simpler. Got a simple demo here, something that has a conditions on it. What I was thinking of is under conditions, which doesn't apply to catalog items. This one has conditions, and it says run the workflow always, run if any other workflows match, run if no other workflows match. But again, that doesn't apply for catalog items because they are linked via that reference field, not run upon condition. See if that helps point them in the right direction. That's all we're here to do. Even if we don't have the answer, see if we can get them in the right direction. Something to look for. How to show warning message when adding an attachment. Let's see. Has anybody responded to this yet? Hello, Nitish. Good to hear from you today. Thanks for joining us. I want to have a warning message displayed when a user tries to attach a file. The idea is to display a message that requires them to accept and acknowledge that the information within the attachment does not contain personal information. Where do I define a message and how to activate it? This is where I would probably go to the Share portal and see what we have there. Share has been relaunched on the developer site. You can check it out by visiting. Bada boom. Hey, that's new. I knew that was coming sooner or later. Why start your app from scratch? So apparently now we have Share. Look at that. Share home all projects. How did I not notice that when I was showing that to you earlier? Yep, there it is. There's your news flash for the day. Share is now part of developer. I'm just going to look for attachments, see what comes up. Could be crazy. Service portal static KBR, service portal download, attach Apache log to incident, PDF generator, copy paste screenshot, add attachment button, easy encryption, add to update set utility, attach screenshots, and nope. Okay, so what would be an approach to do this? As you attach, it's going to upload, but you have to do that before it's attached. That is a fairly complex thing, in my opinion. It could possibly be done with a before business rule on sysattachment. Yeah, you could potentially do that. I would, well, a before business rule won't pop up in a confirmation though. That would be more of a UI action thing. Yeah, this is an interesting one. It's going to require quite a bit of research on my part. Maybe somebody else knows. I'm just going to subscribe to that one and hang on and see what the questions are. That is a pretty deep requirement. I might, trying to think of alternative ways to do that. Maybe an annotation on the form that says, note any attachments on here must not contain. You know what? Let me throw that out there as a cheap alternative. Sometimes the simplest results are the better results. Cannot think of a way to do this at the moment. However, I was considering alternatives. What about putting an annotation on the form that says something like, please note that attachments must not contain personal information. Very simple, elegant, easy to implement, easy to maintain, no custom coding here. Good question. Good question. Ooh, back to the main page. We have a response in the inbox. Let's see what's new over here. Keep these conversations moving along. Sometimes I'll be jumping between conversations. Question on table rotation. This one did come in earlier. I meant to get to this later, but I will get to it now. So let me bring that up and go to content. The question was, they've got table rotation turned on. The ECCQ is a table used to communicate with the mid server. The mid server checks every 5 seconds or so and says, hey, do you have work for me? The mid server is an agent you install on a Windows or Linux machine in your enterprise, and it makes outbound calls on port 443 to check for work, possibly discovery, possibly integrations, possibly event management. There's lots of things this mid server can do. It's simply an agent. It's a little Java applet that checks with the instance in a very secure way. Again, outbound on port 443, same as somebody checking their bank account. So your security people don't have to freak out about, oh my gosh, we've got this thing inside our enterprise that's doing stuff. How does it communicate? The instance simply puts a record in this table, ECC_Q. And because it's so transactional, it's not very useful days, months, weeks later. We use this concept called table rotation. And by default, it retains the table data for 1 day and then moves it to the side, sort of in an archive fashion. And after 7 days, it's rolled off. So its rotation is 1 day for 7 days. And that's what they've got this configured. But they said they only see it for 5 days. I came up a while ago. Oh my gosh, it was 3 hours ago. I've been up too late or too early. And I said, look, I looked in the system definition table rotations, opened up the ECCQ record. In fact, I'll do it here if you like. System definition. And there is a table rotations module, and under there is the definition of how these tables are rotated. Generally, you don't mess with this. It is what it is, and it's one of those deeper sysadmin topics that you should really only monkey with if you're confident you know what you're doing. So here is the ECCQ table. Again, the duration is 1 day, the rotation is set to 7 rotations, and in the related lists, waiting for the related list to load. I'm going to take a drink of tea. In the related list at the bottom are what we call the various rotations. Now, the only one that is active right now, well, we've got the main ECCQ, and then when it does a rotation, it starts numbering them. The most recent being 0, then 1, then 2, then 3. So on and so forth. And it will tell you when these were valid from. So if I sort these in table name order, I should see that it's valid from the epoch. That's funny. And then they gradually get, they're a little older as we go backwards. So 6543210, then they fall off the end and the ECCQ information is totally gone. But the answer is I've got 8 entries here, which is the current table plus the 7 archives or rotations for that. And I said, that's what I see. Can you check yours? And, oops, let me go back to the actual article. Show replies. Hi, Chuck. One of my table rotation schedules says valid from 526 to 527. I go to the ECC table and query created on, and the results are empty. One thing I observed is that it's marked offline equals true, and I'm guessing that's the reason. I couldn't find any details about online, offline. Also, another question, if your in your screenshot, 000 and 004 have a difference of 1 day, but why 001 and 002 have a difference of 3 days with a setting of 1 day? I missed something somewhere. Okay, this is the 18th to 19th, 19th to 22nd, 22nd. It could be that's my personal instance and it's not used a whole lot, but I don't know that for sure. That's interesting because this should only go back 1 week and it's actually going back now that it is, oh, interesting. This one is actually in the future. Couldn't tell you. I'm going to have to look into table rotation a little deeper to answer that one. Let's give a quick response to that. You have a keen eye for noticing the dates. I don't know what the offline equals true is for, nor can I explain the dates. I will check into that and get back to you. I also noted that one of the files is in the future. Okay, I'll keep tabs on that, see what I can learn about table rotation. In fact, the first place I should go is to the docs. Docs.servicenow.com is your friend, our TFM, as we used to say. Table rotation. See what we can find out about table rotation. Table rotation preserves instance performance and averts risk associated with querying and growing datasets by external communication channel, ECCQ. All right, functionality, advantages, disadvantages, dispartitions. Apply table rotation. Okay. Before you begin, table rotation, name, duration, initialize, clean base. Something tells me, let's see, the table rotation schedule. Is that what it was called in there? Was it schedule? All right, let's open up one of those records, see what it says. Hover over some of these fields. If somebody did their job right, they will have hints on these fields, which they don't. Rotation is offline and cannot be queried. Ah, okay. So there's part of our answer is you cannot query. A quick hover over on the schedule field offline tells me that it cannot be queried, meaning you won't get results from it using a glide record or list query. Okay, what's the second part? Why are the dates the way they are? Valid from, hovering, nothing happens. Valid to, hovering, nothing happens. What happens if we do go to table? Wow, that's not very interesting. What do the dates mean? What do the dates mean? How did I end up there? Valid from, valid to. It doesn't really specify what these dates mean. But the overall duration for the action is okay. Initialize sets the rotation to active, must be checked true for rotation or extension to be active. Now, this is all around the table rotation itself. It doesn't really explain what the schedule table is for and how it behaves. So, did I just close that without saving it? Darn. Let's see if this thing has a remember autosave thing. Can't say whether it did or not. Show replies. Reply, and it didn't autosave. Quick hover over, sorry to repeat this on the live stream, of the offline field on the schedule form seems to indicate that queries are not available to offline records. Still checking on the other one. Haven't been hitting the bell. All right, half past the hour. Welcome. Thank you for joining. Are we time traveling now? Yes, we are. I am constantly time traveling in my head. Let me refresh this real quick. Things have happened since I started typing a few minutes ago. Let's look for unreplied. I like to start the new conversations. Then if things run a little thin here, we'll go into some of the open conversations, see if we can jump in and get any information out of there. Importing JPEG pictures with a data source. Wow. That sounds fun. If you're a crazy person like me. Greetings, I would like to import JPEG pictures ServiceNow from a network location or mid-server. Is this possible with the data source? We have a network location with profile pictures for employees, and I'm investigating if I'm able to start importing them into ServiceNow instead of using LDAP as we would. I would use the attachment API. So under the REST API Explorer, which I know I have favorited, there is an attachment API. And you can attach files there. So let's see if there's any documentation I can point them to. Attachment API. Look at that. Wow. Getting lucky with the searches today. It's an inbound REST integration. I recommend taking a look at the inbound REST API attachment API available. Image fields are using the sys attachment table, where the table name field is not the name of the table, e.g. sys user. For image fields, it is ZZ sys user to tell the system this attachment goes with a specific image field. Let me put a link on that. KV, new window, attach, and so I can find that real quick. It's going to be sysattachment.list. Oh, I did have something that I wanted to show you real quick. See if I can find it. Don't know if this is going to work or not. Checking something that somebody asked yesterday. I think it was Kevin Eldridge. Need my IP address of my laptop. One sec. Sorry, I had a distraction moment. My IP address is 029. Just doing a real quick test. All right, it will work. Okay. I keep that up on the screen. Sorry for the distraction. But you can see here the table name. If I say sys user, oops. Anything that starts with a ZZ%, it's actually ZZ underscore, wow. YY. The sys ID is da, 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 da. For example, if I take the sys user table, oops, list, that was fun, and I find a record such as admin that has an image field, Here's a photo, which is interesting because there's a photo up there for administrator. And I'm going to put my image on there just for the fun of it. Let's go to Google Drive, ServiceNow. I don't think I have any real pictures in here, so this should be fun. Images. Here, we'll put my boss up there, Howard Beater. Upload a picture of my boss. He's now the system administrator. The reason I do this is I want to show you that how the system interprets that. So we've got this little caricaturized version of Howard. That's pretty much what he looks like. And the field is called photo on the sysuser table. So if I go to sysattachment.list, I don't know how Studio came up. What did I type? There's sysattachment. And I stand corrected. Let's add the updated so I can get everything new at the top. Scroll, please. There we are. Updated. Sort that newest to oldest. Here. The table name is ZZ_YY sysuser. And the field name is actually the file name photo. That's the field name. So it gets a little wacky. You don't need to generally mess with this behind the scenes unless you're saying, hey, where did this attachment go? They're not stored as attachments like this, where the table name would be something like the sys ATF test results. If I run an ATF test results and it's doing those screen captures while it's running the test, that's when they show up as attachments across the top. Those are, honest to goodness, true blue attachments. The sys attachment table is also used for image fields, but instead of the file name, it shows the field name in the file. So I think I can do that. ZZ_YY sysuser. And this attachment goes with a specific image field indicated in the field name, e.g. photos for sysuser, images placed in the photo field. Normally, you don't need to care about that. You just let the API do its thing. But when you're querying for that information, say, hey, I would like the photo that's attached to the photo field on system administrator's image. Next time I log in, that's going to have a little icon of Howard at the top. That'll be fun. Okay, the thing I wanted to get distracted from, and I want to show you, and I know Kevin was interested in seeing this, was how far we've come between Kingston, shown on the screen, and the oldest release I could actually get to load on my other system was Calgary. I tried, the oldest one I could find, I think, was spring 2011. But for whatever reason, that old code doesn't work on the new Java server. It was bombing out when it was trying to start up the Java engine, or the applet that runs the application. I then moved to Aspen. Aspen didn't work. I tried Berlin. Berlin didn't work. I finally found a later patch of Calgary in hopes that it was new enough not to have any problems. And this is what I got. If you haven't used ServiceNow in a while, or you haven't used it, this was the initial login screen. And you could configure it. I remember doing this as a customer. I put in the call center numbers down there instead of course, the default login information, and said, what does it look like? Compare that with the login screen we have today, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. Let me log out of this. And we're just going to take a quick tour. I don't remember all the differences, but we're probably going to discover some of these. Let's put these next to each other so that it can flip easier. This versus this. Make that a little bigger. Okay. All right. There is a printer icon up here. Why I would want to print the the login page, I don't know. Maybe if it did have call center numbers, you could use that. But there were these different sections you could put onto this UI page, and it was a UI page. Why we have a navigation filter here is because some of the modules could be public. If you had knowledge base articles that you wanted to make available without logging in, you could expose them here and have them down the side. All right, so let me log in. And let me log in. Hope I typed that right. My finger kind of tripped over the keyboard. Got lucky. Okay. Surprisingly, I was hoping to really find something really old so we could have the old orange checkmark logo or maybe the blue meatball logo from 2011, but couldn't find it. So we do have the power logo, which is one logo ago instead of 3 logos. Okay, first thing you notice is this looks fairly cluttered compared with a home page here. This is actually a dashboard? I can't remember. Okay, we've got cleaner looking graphs. Spent a lot of time investing the last 3 or 4 years. Calgary was circa 2000 late I can tell you. I think it's 13 is when it came out. Maybe 2012. No, it was late 2013 when Calgary came out. That doesn't make sense because Eureka was in spring of 14. I'll get back to you on that. I have this recorded somewhere in Evernote. But the left navigation, let me go to the default here, is similar. We still have expandable, collapsible application menus and modules. At the time, they had a different terminology. These were called applications, and these were called modules. So when we came out with actual applications, and Calgary is the first time we see evidence of this with an application picker at the top, and we've always had an update set picker. But what you find is that this title bar gets more and more cluttered as you go on. One thing that I found humorous, it wasn't humorous at the time, but the security for elevating roles, which brings up the dialog, it says, hey, would you like to be security admin? If you're going to modify ACLs or something of that nature, you're going to require this role. And I can elevate that and add this role temporarily onto my admin credentials, which lets me start editing ACLs. In older releases, this is UI 11, I believe. It's not even UI 14. We don't have the edge down the side, so we have no way to favorite these things. If you wanted to favorite them, it was sort of bookmark hell. But the lock icon was the same thing. It would pop this up, and you could say security admin. Now note, I'm going to unelevate that for a second. Turn that off. Note some of the things you can do. Scripts background, for example, is under system definition. Scripts. This drove me nuts when they changed this. Scripts background is under system definition, and it is available to admins. Remember, I took the elevated privilege off. In Calgary, and I think this was Berlin, Calgary, Dublin, Eureka, possibly even Fuji. It was several releases where you had to elevate access to get scripts background. And I could never figure out why. It wasn't like, I don't know. If you're an admin, you should have it. And this used to drive me insane that I had to keep checking that box to say scripts background. Oh, look, there it is. Now I may actually have main to access turned on this instance. No, I don't. Okay. No. And this runs exactly like you would expect. You can put in gs.print hello world. If you could spell it right. Hello world. And you get that. So most of the changes were around the UI. There were a lot of changes. I shouldn't say most. There were a lot of changes around the UI. Obviously, applications have been added. So if we look, Service Portal, Service Desk, incident problem change, we've got our basic ITSM stuff. I didn't turn on any plugins on this particular instance. Back in Calgary, about the only thing you could add on, we do have an old version of asset management, financial management. So there's a hint of early ITBM stuff in there. think it was Berlin or Calgary where we came out with live feeds. So some of this is new. You could stylize these side menus, but you couldn't favorite them. You couldn't edit them. If you wanted to edit them, you right-clicked on them and said Edit Application Menu. Early releases of UI 16, I think it was Geneva, had an issue where you couldn't edit them directly. You still had to go through the module under System Definition. So we came out with the little pencil icon. Seemed very evident and obvious. If you wanted to edit a module, you couldn't. First, you had to edit the application, then drill into the modules down here. Now look at the old UI, how we had the highlights on the field labels, and icons were inconsistent. They were the alignment was sometimes messy. This is still here where you can expand and decrease that. A lot of the system level stuff for the admins was light blue, and that was done through a class, if I remember right. It was, or excuse me, a category that you could put on there. You had to pick the device type, so there wasn't a separate listing of application menus. This right here, this green back arrow, you just hover over this and you would get your form, your form menu, which all of the actions were there. You could still and can still right click on the form header. That hasn't changed. In fact, I still do that most of the time. It was fun watching my wife do some of these things. Like if I go into an incident here, I'm using list v3 on here, by the way. The form menu is still accessible by right clicking right there. But now it's a hamburger menu, more consistent with what you see in other applications around the web. Other web applications have this. There's still a back arrow. The old back arrow was this green thing, again, inconsistent. We had bitmap images that were, if I remember right, 16 by 16 and got really grainy, really pixelated. So we did away with those. In fact, every time you defined a module, you would pick what image you want on there. So business rules under whatever it was. I don't even know how I got here. It's under the application metrics. Okay. So if I look at metrics, and you could still do the partial hint here. I don't know if it says it or not. So here's business rules. And this one has a little script icon. This one has a little angle bracket icon, and it gets even more fun after that. Type filter text. What I was hoping to find was a very old release that would work. This didn't even say type filter text in here. The sidebar is not collapsible. The left nav menu is not collapsible. I'm just going through and picking things at random. We've got system definition, system clones, because there's user administration is pretty much the same. The workflow engine is there, but in a more buggy capacity. I do have the ability to do, this is one that I pointed out yesterday. That was kind of fun. When you do incident.lis, as soon as I hit the T, it goes, boom, and I'm on the list. Okay. Yes, that was very fast. I'm only showing 20 records here. And there is some credence to say the older releases were somewhat faster. The code base is about a third of the size. At least the zip file that I downloaded to install this Calgary release was only about 200 meg, as opposed to, I think it's close to a gig now. I'll have to look at one of my later releases that I downloaded. In fact, I may have that right here. Downloads. 1.6 meg for one of the London test releases I did a couple months ago. So very, very small. You got to remember, we were also a much smaller company 5-6 years ago. It tells you how much we've added. There was no performance analytics. There was reporting. There was no ITOM in here. In fact, if I go to the plugins, I don't have maint mode. There are, look at the cell formatting, how you can highlight instead of a dot. When they've initially switched that, I think it was in UI 14, from the solid background to a dot, I asked Tyler Jones, who was one of our UI developers at the time, I said, can we have a property or a preference to set that one way or the other, and he made that happen. We still have list context menus, so that hasn't changed. We still have the list menu down here. We still have list buttons. Obviously, we can't create a new form. Update sets are update sets. Those really haven't changed. The applications, however, if I want to create a new application, the application picker was up here. So we really did a UI overhaul on a lot of this stuff to clean up this top menu bar up here. So there's stuff hidden under here. There's a cog menu for your settings. That didn't really exist before. We've got debug options. We've got help. The help brought you to, wow, okay, I didn't see what it was supposed to bring you to, but my guess is somewhere on the wiki. We'll see. And there was a hint of applications, but they were not scoped. So if I create a new application called money, short description, send me money. You can see there's hints of things coming along. U_money_user was the user role that it automatically created. I submit that, and it starts coming up with, hey, what tables, what roles? Note by default, my related lists are not collapsed. That was done by the icon over here. Toggle tabs on and off. Carolyn, you said time travel, so I'm time traveling. If I go to the incident form, it has a couple of tabs. I'll open up one of those just to show. We are having retro fun this morning, Jay. Kingston showing 633 plugins on my instance up front. What is it like? 169 in Calgary, is that what you said? I'll take a look. The tabs are under, where were they? I don't even remember now. I don't use it. I leave them on and I leave them on. Oh, it's under here. When you look at the forms, this is where you toggle tabbed forms. So this cog menu really consolidated a lot of weird things from this top menu bar over the years. There's my paperclip icon. That is just a horrific icon. Oh, note that the mandatory fields, the edited fields, like if I say money 2, oops, let's not do that one because that's already established. It goes to green. People were confused about what these meant. We had green, we had red, we had orange. Red meant required, which you can read up here. But again, that wasn't terribly standard. I somehow kind of liked that. That was a feature that I enjoyed. Many of these HTML elements are standard elements rather than the, I don't know what you call these, the stylized modern look. If you look at a choice list, for example, here, versus a choice list down here, you can create a new table, but that would take you away from the form into a table creator. So let's call this cache. It calls it U_cache. Everything was global back then. Is it extensible? We had the capability to create extensible tables and extend from other tables. Do you want to create a module for this? In what menu? A lot of this is still the same. If you go to the table creator, let's go to tables and forms. Oops, excuse me, tables, exclude tables, system definition tables. Some things have just changed radically and some not so much. Click new on that. Again, if you looked at that list, I don't know if you saw it real quick, but here's our columns, controls, application access. Obviously, application access came along with scoped applications, but all I have here is rows. So let's starting amount, which will be a float, ending amount. I have no idea. I haven't thought of any requirements. I'm just doing this off the top of my head, which is a float. And you will still see screenshots on the current doc site, even for Kingston, that reference this UI. It's kind of wacky. You could make new rows. The list editing, the embedded list is still pretty much the same. Embedded lists, I don't even remember when those came along, but it was a while ago. I think it was around 2011. Active will make a true false. A lot of the data types are still there. Default to true. Let's submit that. and I have just made a table. So creating tables was still pretty easy. It added the role for my application. There's that. There's the menus. All files should look pretty familiar if you've done this in Studio. This is way, way pre-Studio. I think this precedes Studio by about 3 years, I think. We can publish this application to an update set should we want to share that. Again, looks very familiar. We can create a new update set. Let's go back to the plugins. There's my money menu. Caches. Plugins, out of the box default 168. Yeah, we've added a few things. Quite a few things. And even turned off some of these. I don't think best practice is in there anymore. I think we had a common practice as well that got really, really nasty. There was no service portal. We had CMS. CMS is still in there. Content management. So we had sites, we had pages, if you haven't seen that before. I can do sites. Here's our default employee self-service site. View the home page, and up comes similar look and feel. Not exactly, but you know, there's only so many things you can do to a default out-of-the-box demonstration of that. I don't recall if there was anything specific that I wanted to show in here, but a lot of fun doing this retro stuff. And what else? What else? You could click on your name to get to the profile. I think that's still in there in some way, shape, or form. Oh, we can collapse the sidebar. It was this teeny little icon up here. Notice that there's a little yield sign. I know that hover over is that tooltip is very small, but it indicates that the lock is unlocked. You are elevated. Impersonate was the key. That was not intuitive to a lot of people. And I think we still had mid servers. Hey, I wonder what you get if you download this. You get mid server 2015-0608. Hey, that's only 3 years old. Not bad for Calgary. We were patching this for a long time. Stats.do is still there. Stats.do. This happens to be Calgary patch 7 hotfix 5, which came out almost 3 years ago to the day. So yes, we're still maintaining Calgary 3 years ago. That's pretty bizarre. I was really hoping to find a seriously old release where this would say spring 2010 and show you some real nasty, crappy stuff. Discovery is not enabled. There's just, it was a much more limited time. You could see that even though these were the days of Frank Slootman and rapid growth, we were just starting to take off, especially in the vertical products, the business units, ITSM, ITBM, ITOM, performance analytics came out. We did the acquisition in Dublin. The first release it was integrated into the platform was Eureka. And that really started performance analytics. ITOM was shortly thereafter. We did the acquisition around Eureka and started integrating it in Fuji, and then in Geneva we had service mapping. So that tells you where we are sort of in this old original timeline. We did have a project management. I don't have the plugin turned on. I don't even know if it's available without, if it was a pay for thing at that time. Let's look. Contains project. And yes, these shortcut characters still worked back then. Ooh, we had project management V2. It was a different time. And as I mentioned yesterday, it was a time when you could pretty much know all the features of the platform that were there. Since there was no scoping, there were far fewer API calls. We didn't have scope versus non-scope. We didn't have gs.info. We used gs.print or gs.log for a lot of those messages. Those went into the log table. Or if you had debug turned on, gs.print would go at the bottom. A lot of these things would also look very familiar. For example, if we did debug business rule and then went into an incident and said, open that incident, you would see at the bottom of the list a very, very similar kind of thing here for emails in and out. I don't know. Ooh, this should be fun. I don't know if we had scriptless business rules at this point. Let's find out. And the answer is no. Everything had to be scripted. So there was no condition field. There was no field values field available yet. I think that was a Jared Latham thing that he came in with. But again, you'll recognize a lot of these things are very, very similar. The other one that I was thinking of wasn't business rules. It was something else that had been, notifications. Notifications, email notifications were under system policy. And I don't think we had record triggered. Oh, yes, we did. This was still pretty new. Notifications used to be exclusively triggered by events. And I don't recall exactly when this switched over. I don't have notes going back that far. But it was obviously pre-Calgary where you could now do a notification triggered based on incident or updated. Previously it was always based on an event. And this wasn't even a choice in here because it wasn't a choice. But you had to say what event triggers this notification. There is the condition field. The condition builder was similar. Active is true and, oh, my mouse froze. This may be the end of the show. I think my battery might have just died. That's weird. Okay, well, when your mouse is dead and it's after the top of the hour, it's time to go on. So thank you very much for joining me. I had a wonderful time. Look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. The computer has a way of telling you, Chuck, you've done enough. It's time to move on and change your batteries. So hope you had fun with that little retro look back at Calgary. If I could find a way to start an older instance, that would be additionally fun. I'll see if I do have somebody who's done this experiment in the past, but it hasn't been recently. It's probably been 3 or 4 years since they started a very, very old instance. And I'm curious to see if I can do that. They're fast to download, they're fast to start up, because there's so much less to them. Hope you enjoyed that as a quick look back to say, because it's easy to say, oh, there wasn't much in Jakarta. Oh, there wasn't much in Kingston. When you start adding these things together, in fact, I could probably put together a quick laundry list just between Eureka and Kingston of all of the features that we've added to the platform, to the other products, and it would blow you away. It reminds me of how I've been tracking the recovery from the surgery I had back in February. Day by day, it doesn't seem like much. Week by week, it gets a little more increasing, and month by month, in the case of this healing process, it's amazing that just how things have changed when you're not. It's like watching your kids grow up. There, I put a metaphor on a metaphor. That means it's time to go. Thank you for joining me. If you learned something, you thought this was helpful, give it a quick thumbs up on the YouTube video so that others can find it as well. I'll put some notes in about what we covered. Had a lot of fun. Share it with other people, and you can be helpful. And until tomorrow, I wish you a fun farewell. Bye now.